Right. Well, tonight's story is a story about a pumpkin. Once upon a time, a little boy called Jack had a pumpkin plant in his garden. To start with, it was quite small, but it grew longer and longer with bigger and bigger leaves, and the stalk was getting longer, reaching out across half the garden, and the flowers started to appear. Do you know what colour pumpkin flowers are?
No.
They are yellow. Most of the flowers were male flowers with long stems, so they didn't produce any fruit. But
green.
one of the pumpkin flowers was a female, and it produced a very, very small ball at the end, which started to grow bigger and 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 bigger.
Which choose clouds?
What did you say?
Clouds. Clouds.
It reached the cloud. No, the pumpkin didn't reach the cloud, but it did get bigger every day. It was soon too big to put your arms around it, and then it got bigger. And soon it was nearly as big as a motorbike, and it got bigger. And then finally it was as big as a car. It was huge. So Jack decided he was going to do something with this giant pumpkin. He couldn't move it on its own, and he thought the only way to move it is to put wheels on it. So he decided to burrow into the pumpkin he got a sharp knife and started to dig out the inside of the pumpkin. And then, when it was dug out, he dug a few holes in the edge of the pumpkin for the windows, so he could sit inside the pumpkin and look out of the windows. And then he thought it would be a good idea to have some wheels on it. So he took his largest toy that he could find, which was a giant monster truck, very, very big one, almost as big as the pumpkin, and took the wheels from the monster truck and put them on the pumpkin at the front and the back. And now the pumpkin could roll around the garden with him inside, pushing it with his feet. Well, you've never seen such a strange vehicle. Can you imagine if you saw a motorbike coming down the road, or a bicycle coming down the road, or a car coming down the road, or a lorry or a bus? You wouldn't think any of it. You wouldn't think anything of it. But what would you say if you saw a giant pumpkin coming down the road? Well, that's what he decided to do. Jack decided to take his pumpkin for a ride down the road. And the pumpkin was so big that the cars couldn't get past it. And behind Jack, there was a long queue of cars all going beep, 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 get out of the way, hurry up, you're in my way, I'm late for work, I'm late for the doctors, I've got to go and get my children. All the cars were getting very angry with Jack and the pumpkin, but they didn't know who was inside the pumpkin because they couldn't see. All they saw was a giant pumpkin, and the windows were on the sides, not at the back, so they couldn't see inside the pumpkin. And this particular pumpkin could only go as fast as Jack could walk, because there was a hole at the bottom which he had cut for his feet, so he could walk it along the road with the wheels turning. Then Jack decided to go and get himself an ice cream. So he stopped the pumpkin and got out of the pumpkin and went into the ice cream shop. And he bought himself a delicious chocolate chip ice cream. All the cars behind him had to wait a long time for him to come back. They got more and more angry. Beep, 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 went all the cars. Toot, 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 toot. Get out of the way. Beep, 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 beep. Boop, 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 boop. Burp, burp, pop, pop. That's the noises the cars made. But Jack couldn't go any faster. He was trying his best, but just couldn't go very fast. He tried to run, but it's quite difficult to run inside a pumpkin. Finally, Jack got into town, and unknown to him, there was a big parade in the middle of town of all sorts of floats with things on them like music and dancing and singing and fancy dress of every kind, and the people were dressed up in the streets and having a great time and looking at the floats coming down the road. The floats are like cars which have been made to look like something much bigger, like a dragon or a castle or whatever you like. Anyway.
What are you talking about?
Oh, well, have you never seen a parade in the street? You've never seen a parade, but in the street, sometimes they have parades where all the things drive down the street, like giant pumpkins, for example. But usually they're made out of cars with a pumpkin on top. Or a castle driving down the road. Obviously, a castle on top of a car. So, people were expecting that sort of thing. So those sort of things were driving down the road, and people were cheering and waving. Well, as Jack arrived, his pumpkin looked like one of the floats to go in the parade. So a man said to him, "This way, please, this way." And he went into the parade. Now he was in the middle of the parade, in the middle of the town, walking his pumpkin through the town. How everybody clapped. They'd never seen such a large pumpkin in their life before. Anyway, eventually Jack got home, and he suddenly remembered when he'd been digging out the inside of the pumpkin, he'd got a lot of seeds. Hundreds and hundreds of seeds, in fact. So he dried them he put them on the table in the garden, and he dried them out, and then he put the seeds into little packages with a photograph of him and the giant pumpkin. And then he decided to sell these packages for money. So he went round from door to door, knocking on everybody's door, saying, "Would you like to buy some giant pumpkin seeds? This is a photograph of me with the pumpkins." And he'd show everybody a photograph. Well, you can imagine that a lot of people decided it was a good idea to buy the pumpkin seeds. And as a consequence, he sold hundreds and hundreds of pumpkin seeds and made himself a lot of money, which he could use to buy himself the thing he wanted more than anything in the world. Shall I tell you what it was? Or would you like to have a guess? Or are you asleep? What do you think he wanted more than anything in the world?
I don't know.
Something that his mummy and daddy wouldn't let him have very often.
What? I don't know.
Something where you could watch things.
Can you tell me?
Yes, he bought himself his very own iPad. You can imagine how pleased he was. And that basically is the end of the story for now. I hope you liked it.